The final stop on kickoff. Thursday night kickoff. Today's final stop is the preview and predictions for the NFC South. We're talking about the greatest quarterback of all time joining the Buccaneers. Now, Tom Brady may be getting older, but that wide receiving core he has to work with is going to be a lot of fun to watch. The linesman booster. The team also signed Leonard Fournette. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are certainly a playoff team, but I don't believe they're a team that wins this division because I think the Saints are that much better. And Drew Brees can only get screwed over and come up short so many times before he breaks through. The New Orleans Saints should be a Super Bowl favorite to a lot of people. Drew Brees is older, but you wouldn't know it by watching him play football. People are sleeping on Teddy Bridgewater and the Panthers. They won't make the playoffs, but don't sleep on Teddy Bridgewater. We've done that way too many times before. And the Atlanta Falcons will have Todd Gurley. Could it be a career renaissance for Todd Gurley? The team had never had problems scoring the ball, but defense has been their problem. This is the NFC South preview and predictions. Don't you dare go anywhere else. Back to the YouTube channel. And today it is my further ado to talk about the NFC South. We usually go east, north, southwest, but we did it a little bit differently. More so because I feel like the NFC South is a division that has a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about the entire division right here on this YouTube channel. I urge everyone to hit the like button and subscribe. The like button pushes it out in front of other people. And of course, subscribing just builds the base. We are just hovering around 650 subscribers. So again, we're going to try to keep pushing that number out there. The NFC South is going to be an interesting division this year. I think personally the NFC South is a division that underwent the most changes this offseason. Particularly Tampa Bay is the hot talking point of the whole division. The Saints are as great as they are. The Panthers signed Teddy Bridgewater. They also have Christian McCaffrey. And the Falcons bring Todd Gurley and some changes as well. We're going to talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers first because I feel like that's the talking point. That's the talking point for pretty much anybody. All you'll hear about is the NFC South is Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers quarterback. The team will no longer have Jameis Winston, and they're going to get quite the upgrade. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers agreed this offseason to sign the greatest quarterback in NFL history, Tom Brady. Now, Tom Brady last year was coming off of a season that was lackluster. His stats on paper weren't absolutely terrible, but of course he was not the Tom Brady that we're used to seeing, and he didn't quite have the weapons in New England that we're used to seeing him working with. That was part of the problem for the New England Patriots last year. Is yes, they had Edelman, but Edelman's had some injury history. And they have, the Patriots now have a young receiving core, but they don't have the receiving core. You know, Brady is, it looked like it for the first time we were seeing Tom Brady spiral off just a little bit. His throws weren't as accurate, his power, and just the typical Tom Brady was not in full force last year. Now next year, or this year rather, he goes to a team that is loaded with receivers and offensive powerhouse. Tom Brady will be the new quarterback for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I think anything under 4,000 yards this year would be a disappointment because you just have to sit and look at the weapons that Tom Brady has to work with. I don't think anybody can sit here and tell me that somebody like Chris Godwin and Mike Evans can't make plays. And Tom Brady being there, it's going to be a scary team. Blaine Gabbert is the backup for Tom Brady. Obviously, he won't see playing time unless Brady gets hurt. Running back. Now, going into the season, the team's running back was supposed to be Ronald Jones. However, last week the team signed Leonard Fournette. We know that Leonard Fournette had voiced his frustrations on the Jaguars, and the team finally sent him to the other side of Florida to Tampa Bay. This is a great move. So you have Tom Brady, you have the receivers that you have, and now you have Leonard Fournette, who's a good running back. He just was very unhappy. Sometimes Leonard Fournette comes off as this guy that voices his frustrations and complains too much. But we'd never take away the value of Leonard Fournette because he is a solid player, and he's definitely going to help this. The team drafted Vaughn as a running back in the 3rd round. They also have Ronald Jones, who will probably be the backup, assuming that Fournette would be the lead runner for Tampa Bay. The receiving core could be the best in the league. Chris Godwin is a monster, and Mike Evans is a top 5 receiver to a lot of people in the league. The team signed Gronkowski shortly after Tom Brady took his talents to Tampa Bay. They announced that they were going to sign Rob Gronkowski. Now, here's the thing. Rob Gronkowski has a history of injuries. We know that. But more so, Rob Gronkowski is coming off of a hiatus. Do I think Gronk is going to put up the numbers that he put up on New England? I can't sit here and tell you that, but I don't think he's going to be terrible. I think a lot of people aren't really giving Gronk much of a chance. Perryman left. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers wanted to re-sign him, but again, he left and went to the Jets. Watson and Miller will be the guys that battle for the 3rd wideout spot on the receiving core. Their offensive line is pretty solid. The team's first draft was Tristan Wirfs to be their first draft pick offensive lineman. They also have Ali Marpet and Jensen, who are solid on the offensive line. As far as the team's offense goes, it should be one of the best in the league. You talk about Tom Brady. You talk about a good running back, great receivers, and what should be a decent offensive line. I don't think there's any reason to sit here and believe why Tampa Bay will have problems scoring the football this year. They didn't have the problems with Winston, and they damn sure shouldn't with Tom Brady. Defensive line, the team's led by Vita Vea. They also have Ndamukong Suh as on their defensive line, but Ndamukong Suh is not going to be that player that he once was when he was on Detroit. He's obviously much older. He's had some problems. They also think that Suh is going to be. They think that Ndamukong Suh at this point in his career will probably be average at best. And they have Golston also at defensive end. So this team's defensive line is not that bad. Their linebackers, they have one of, if not the best linebacking cores in the NFL. Shaq Barrett is coming off of a league-leading 19.5 sacks last year. If there's anything that's impressive, it's certainly that. Jason Pierre-Paul was solid. He was hurt for a couple games last year, but he was good when he was on the field. Levante David is great. And White, they team like Devin White, who is special as a rookie middle linebacker. This linebacking core should be pretty fantastic this year. You don't get 19 sacks on accident. The secondary, Murphy Bunting is coming off of a strong year. Davis and Dean will battle for another corner spot. They have Edwards at safety, and the team drafted, Antoine Winfield Jr., who could start at safety start in the other safety spot right away if Evans isn't healthy. This team definitely looks pretty decent on defense. And I think that that's one of the things that gets overshadowed by Tampa Bay sometimes is how good their offense is. They don't get the proper credit on defense. Their linebacking core is fantastic on paper. Their defensive line is a little bit of a question mark. And their secondary, we're not quite sure what we'll get from it. But as far as the defense goes, it's a pretty solid defense. Again, it could get better. I think if they work on bolstering their defense, this team has anything that it takes to succeed. The only thing with Tampa Bay is that they're coming off of a team that has been in well-controlled the division for quite a while. Now, we talk about a guy like Drew Brees. He seems like he's one of those quarterbacks that gets older, but his body doesn't show it. Drew Brees missed 5 games last year, and his replacement was Teddy Bridgewater, who did not lose a single game. Now, obviously, Teddy Bridgewater is onto a starting position outside of a different team in the division, which we'll get to a little bit later on. Brees is elite despite his age. Drew Brees had a fantastic season when he was on the football field. The team also re-signed Taysom Hill to be a dual threat. Taysom Hill can be used in a lot of different ways for the New Orleans Saints. And they also signed Jameis Winston, who probably won't get much playing time unless there's a backup situation. Now, I don't sit here and think that Jameis Winston is the worst quarterback I've ever seen, but he made a lot of mistakes on Tampa Bay, and one of the things is that he threw a lot of interceptions. The guy had 30-something interceptions last year. And he's one of those quarterbacks that just always seems like he's going for the big play. And that was part of the problem with Jameis Winston. Drew Brees is undoubtedly the New Orleans Saints quarterback until he hangs it up, and I expect another great season from Drew Brees behind this team. Running backs, now the team is close. I don't know if they've gotten to a complete deal with Alvin Kamara yet. They also have Latavius Murray as well, and they have Burton, but Burton is unlikely to get any playing time. Alvin Kamara is the unquestioned leader of this run game, and what's great about Alvin Kamara is that not only can he run the ball great, he's able to catch the ball off of the pass as well. The run game is good, and the quarterback, again, Drew Brees is... You can't say enough about him. Their receiving core is going to be better, if that's even possible. Michael Thomas is coming off of one of the most historic seasons in NFL history. He had 1,700-plus yards last year, and he broke the record for the most receptions in a single season with 149. The team signed Emmanuel Sanders, who's also another good receiver, and they also have Jared Cook at tight end, who's a solid tight end. So this team's offense for the New Orleans Saints shouldn't have too much of any problem scoring that. And to add the icing on the cake, their offensive line is one of the best offensive lines in the league. So this team's offense should be fantastic. They're obviously hoping Kamara can stay healthy. Their run game should be something that they should look at too. Their defensive line, we talk about another good part of the team. They have fantastic run defense, the New Orleans Saints. Cameron Jordan is great at what he does. Davenport and Hendrickson are both also good. Sheldon Rankins needs to stay healthy. He's a defensive tackle, if I'm correct. They re-signed Onyemata. They have Brown and Mario Edwards Jr. as well for the team's defensive line. Their linebackers, Demario Davis is a beast. Alonzo was solid, and they have Anzalone as well to be their linebackers core. And their secondary could be a bit interesting this year. Marshawn Lattimore is one of the best corners in the league. They have him. The team also re-signed Janoris Jenkins. And they also brought back Malcolm Jenkins. Malcolm Jenkins used to be on the New Orleans Saints for those of you that don't know, about 6-7 years ago. He then went to the Eagles, and the team brought him right back. He's a very good safety. Williams, Gardner, and Johnson will be battling between these safety positions. But this New Orleans team is stacked on almost every single position, if you ask me. Personally, I know that New Orleans seems to be one of those teams that just get screwed over a different way in the playoffs. But in all honesty, I can't really sit here and tell you that New Orleans is not a Super Bowl favorite again. They should be. Drew Brees, there's only so many times where the Saints and Drew Brees can just keep getting unlucky in the playoffs. The championship game 2 years ago against LA was a disgrace when they missed that call. They missed that call. It would have set up a field goal, which would have most likely sent the Saints to the Super Bowl that year. Last year, they had the overtime collapse against the Minnesota Vikings. That pass to Adam Thielen late in the game, and then that quick pass to Rudolph the goal line pass to Kyle Rudolph in the end zone sent the Vikings in a shocker as the Saints. And I think somebody said it was the first year where Drew Brees and Tom Brady were both eliminated in the first round. So you have to have some type of sympathy for Drew Brees, but it can only go on so much longer. This Saints team should be fantastic this upcoming season. A team that never had a problem scoring the football, but they've had a problem defending it, and they've had a lot of injuries, and they've been a very unlucky team. That's the Atlanta Falcons. Matt Ryan is a great quarterback, but a great quarterback needs time to throw the football. The offensive line was terrible at giving Matt Ryan time to throw the football last year. Matt Schaub also is a decent enough quality backup for the Atlanta Falcons, but Matt Ryan will be your unquestioned quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons, but the team needs to do a better job of giving Matt Ryan that space that he needs to throw the football. Matt Ryan is a little bit shaky at times. He tends to sometimes throw poor timed interceptions, but Matt Ryan is a great quarterback that I think definitely would benefit from a good offensive line. Running backs, this is the new one. Todd Gurley joins the Atlanta Falcons to be their running back. And if there's one thing I can tell you is that if there's anybody that needs a career renaissance more than anybody else, it's Todd Gurley. Todd Gurley was a very good running back for the Rams for a couple of years. He then started to suffer from some knee arthritis injuries, and last year the run blocking was not that great for Todd Gurley either. So that's part of the problem. I think it's a mix and match with Todd Gurley. I think if there's any team that fits Todd Gurley's play style, it's the Atlanta Falcons, because I think the way that this team plays their offense and is high-powered and fast-scoring, I've always looked at the Falcons to be a good place for Todd Gurley to play football. So we're hoping that Todd Gurley can be a candidate for the NFL Comeback Player of the Year, but I'm not sure. Again, we'll have to see how that goes. The receivers got a little bit better. This has always been a good receiving corps. The team signed Hayden Hurst to be their tight end. I forgot where he's coming from. I forgot where he's coming from. Julio Jones is the best wide receiver in the league in my eyes. Now, a lot of people will say, oh, what about Michael Thomas? Julio's been holding it down for quite a while as the best receiver in the league. He's coming off of a fantastic year. Calvin Ridley is good as well. Gets injured sometimes. Gage is there as also. And the team also signed Laquan Treadwell, who was supposed to be a great wide receiver. I believe the Vikings drafted him, but he could be a steal to see if he fits. Wide receivers tend to usually thrive in the Atlanta Falcons system. Obviously, the system is run by Julio Jones without question, but that's one of the things that we're expecting is a great offensive fantasy team is the Atlanta Falcons. Now, their offensive line, the team drafted Hennessy. That's quite a last name. And they have other names they need to be much better than last year. This offensive line needs to be much better for the sake of Matt Ryan and the Falcons. If you can't give a quarterback just some time, you're going to struggle. And that's one of the things that might be worried about, is that we need the offensive line for the Falcons to be a lot better this year. The defensive line, looks like we got some good names on here. The team signed Dante Fowler Jr. to be a part of their defensive line. They also drafted Davidson. Grady Jarrett is great, coming off a good year. They re-signed Davison and Bailey. And Means is coming off of an injury-riddled season. The defensive line is not that bad, but some improvement some improvement would not be that bad. Linebacking core. Ala Khan is a replacement. Jones is great. Deion Jones, that is. The team signed Reynolds, and they drafted Walker. This is where it gets questioned, because the further we go down the defense of the Atlanta Falcons, the more that we seem to have some kind of problems. The secondary. The team drafted A.J. Terrell to be on their secondary. They like Sheffield. Keanu Neal is coming off an injury, and they have Kazi and Allen as well. Definitely defense has been the question for the Falcons. I think that their offensive line needs to get better, and I think that their defense needs to get better. This Falcons team is just unlucky. Ever since they lost that Super Bowl to New England, I honestly can sit here and say that this Falcons team has not been able to find its footing. Ever since that time, they were dominating the Patriots. They were literally ripping them apart through the first half, and then the second half, it was probably the greatest comeback in NFL history. But I know there's probably a Falcons fan watching this right now, so I'll probably try to stay away from that content. But their defense, they need to stop. The players get hurt a lot, and I think that's one of the problems with the Falcons is that they tend to have a lot of injuries. But their defense is definitely going to need to step it up. Offensive line and defense is what I think the Falcons need to work on the most. But as far as scoring the football goes, it's going to be interesting to see Todd Gurley in a uniform that is different than the LA Rams this year. The Carolina Panthers. A lot of people have this team as the bottom feeder in the division. I don't know if I would have them as the bottom feeder. I also don't know that I would set super high standards for them. They will have a different quarterback that is not named Cam Newton. They did have one named Kyle Allen. I didn't think Kyle Allen was that great. He had a couple of good games last year, and then he fell into the sink of boring. Teddy Bridgewater is going to be the quarterback of the Carolina Panthers going into the 2020 season. Teddy Bridgewater played 5 games last year, substituting the injured Drew Brees on the Saints, and he won all 5 of them. Teddy Bridgewater is a good quarterback, and he has a decent receiving core to work with, so I don't sit here and think that Teddy Bridgewater is going to have a bad year. I'm actually very interested to see what Teddy Bridgewater is going to do, especially on a different team. Granted, he doesn't have the weapons to work with that the Saints did, but this team is still good enough. The running back, I'm not even going to go over the backup running back because I have no idea who it is. Christian McCaffrey had a historic season last year as a running back. He caught for 1,000 yards and rushed for over 1,000. Christian McCaffrey is the #1 fantasy pick for a lot of people. When you have that #1 overall pick, it tends to be Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey's been a solid running back, but last year he literally, as much as I love Derrick Henry, I have to say that I think Christian McCaffrey is the best running back in football. It's just absolutely unbelievable what he did last year. And Christian McCaffrey is one tough dude. And we're going to see what happens this year if his ceiling is even higher than it was last year as a running back. Receivers. DJ Moore is an underrated receiver. Samuel is great as well. The team signed Robbie Anderson coming from the New York Jets. Thomas and Manhurts will battle at tight end. The receiving core is pretty decent for the Carolina Panthers. You know, it might not give you a fantasy victory, but DJ Moore has quietly been one of the better receivers in the league. Robbie Anderson has had his moments on the Jets, but I think that him being in a different system may actually help him, and we don't really know what we're going to get from the tight end system on the Carolina Panthers. Offensive line is a huge makeover. That's all I have written for this. That's literally all I have written, is that it's a huge makeover. Defensive line, Brian Burns is good. Weatherly, Short, and Brown. The defensive line, pass rush for the Carolina Panthers is not that bad. It's actually been better, and I believe that they were one of the better pass rushers last year, or the pass rushing teams last year. Linebackers, the team signed Whitehead. They also have Thompson as well that they like. And their secondary is going to be a bit of a question because the team has Boston and Jackson return, but every other person on the Carolina secondary is a new position. They have Boston and Jackson both returning, and everybody else is new. So clearly, their secondary is new. They don't really know what they're getting out of that. Their linebackers are decent. Their defensive line is probably one of the best positions on the team. I just don't think that people are putting that high of a standard on the Carolina Panthers because a lot of times when we think of a team like the Panthers, outside of that 15-1 season, we just tend to think of mediocre. We don't tend to think of anything else. And that's not necessarily the case because the names on this Carolina Panthers team are not that bad, but we don't ever tend to sit here and think of the Carolina Panthers as a team that really is more than a 9-7 team at best. Christian McCaffrey, we'll have to see what he can do this coming season. Teddy Bridgewater is clearly the guy to watch. But that's what I think about that. And that's it, guys. That is your divisional preview. That's all of them. I've taken all my notes. I've talked all my talk. And it's time for some football. I do have the New Orleans Saints winning this division as well this year. What do you guys think? You feel free to always hit your comments and all those things down in the below, of course, in the comments below. But that's what I think for the NFC South, and I hope everybody's ready for some football. So stay safe, guys, and we're going to keep it rolling on this channel.